Sidney Powell promised to release the Kraken and show Americans the scope of election fraud on November 3rd, 2020.
Organized and conducted with the help of Silicon Valley people, the big tech companies, the social media companies, and even the media companies. And I'm going to release the Kraken.
Shortly before midnight on Wednesday, she filed a 104-page complaint detailing everything she asserts took place in Georgia. The general outlines of the massive election fraud is much the same in all the contested states: Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, etc. What gives Georgia special urgency is the upcoming runoffs for Georgia's 2 Senate seats, which could hand the entire federal government over to the Democrats. These are enormous stakes. And so, if you're looking for a simple yet complete summary of the Georgia filing, its key accusations as well as actual examples and statements from the witnesses from the affidavits themselves, then look no further. We have you covered, for after watching this video, you will not only understand what's going on in all of its facets, you'll be able to explain them to someone else. Welcome. We're The Conservative Take, and we're starting right now.
Both the Georgia and the Michigan lawsuits suffer from the fact that Powell and her team had less than 2 weeks to prepare complaints that would normally take months to finalize. This rush shows up in the fact that the allegations are a bit disorganized and there are typos. Unsurprisingly, leftists have latched on to these non-substantive problems as proof that the substantive allegations in the complaint are fallacious. In addition, leftists are doing their usual thing of saying that, because they disagree with the facts, the allegations are therefore old and discredited or debunked, and can be disregarded. This attack from the hard-left Vice News illustrates the point. Moreover, one of the biggest challenges with the 2020 election fraud is creating an accessible narrative that doesn't sound like just a mess of disparate claims and studies. Enter Andrea Widberg of The American Thinker and Doug Ross, who's put together an attractive infographic that he describes as so easy to consume even Democrats can understand. It will be these people's exhaustive journalistic work for which this video expose will be built on. This expose will give you an extremely brief overview of the allegations. For in this expose, Ms. Widberg, organizing the narrative chronologically and by subject matter, reveals the causes of action arising under Georgia election law, federal law, and the Constitution.
In addition, we will bring to life Mr. Ross's brilliant infographic to give you a graphical overview of the vote fraud allegations. Throughout this video, we will break away and give you numerous examples of alleged violations in the 3 core categories: illegal procedures, insecure voting machines, and illegal ballots. You will audibly hear the words of the very people who first-hand witnessed the activities as they are ripped directly from the affidavits from the Georgia complaint.
We will reveal the complaint's charge that fraud is so large that it makes the defense that this was just an accident to be an utter impossibility. We will reveal how Ms. Powell's Georgia complaint involved foreign software, domestic terrorists, and socialist dictators. We will show that the suit claims election corruption that goes all the way to the Georgia Secretary of State, never-Trumper Brad Raffensperger, and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, which includes the deliberate destruction of documentary evidence. Lastly, Ms. Powell's Georgia complaint offers massive accounts of first-person eyewitness and expert testimony, all made via sworn affidavits and under penalty of perjury, of Dominion's voting system's vulnerability to fraud. How, moreover, to this end, the fraud was even optimized as late as election night, November 3rd. Will the trend of America's waking up to not only the possibility that Biden stole the election, but to the likelihood that he stole the election grow? Will Americans from both parties who want fair and free elections rise up, speak up, and fight back? We shall see. Now here is the complete and graphical summary of Sidney Powell's Georgia complaint. Let's begin. At the same time that Powell filed the complaint in Georgia, she filed a companion lawsuit in Michigan. The problem with both lawsuits is that they are extremely long and assert dozens of facts pointing to 3 different issues: traditional fraud, which are cemetery votes, fake ballots; computer fraud, the Dominion system, and data manipulation; an executive department overreach that illegally changed voting rules in both states. For each of these categories, the evidence and the applicable law are different. The complaint repeats what Powell has said before about Dominion and Smartmatic voting machines being created to help Hugo Chavez win elections. Powell quotes a Venezuelan whistleblower direct testimony about the two systems, including Chavez's requirements that the software would hide vote manipulation from audits. The computers were designed to enable virtually endless vote manipulation throughout the voting process, whether printing ballots, feeding them into the counting machine, or actually counting them. The computers were also connected to the internet, so when it came to data manipulation, no one had to be physically present with the computers. The systems have been associated with election fraud in various countries.
96,600 mail-in ballots were illegally counted as they were not cast by legal voters.
Russell Ramsland confirms that data breaches in the Dominion software permitted rogue actors to penetrate and manipulate the software during the recent general election. He further concludes that at least 96,600 mail-in ballots were illegally counted as they were not cast by legal voters. Expert Navid Keshavareznia explains that U.S. intelligence services had developed tools to infiltrate foreign voting systems, including Dominion. He states that Dominion software is vulnerable to data manipulation by unauthorized means and permitted election data to be altered in all battleground states. He concludes that hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast for President Trump in the 2020 general election were transferred to former Vice President Biden.
In Floyd County, 3,300 votes found on a memory stick.
The Dominion system undermines the reconciliation of the number of voters and the number of ballots cast, opening the door to ballot stuffing and fraud.
The design and features of the Dominion software do not permit a simple audit to reveal its misallocation, redistribution, or deletion of votes. First, the system's central accumulator does not include a protected real-time audit log that maintains the date and timestamps of all significant election events. This allows an unauthorized user the opportunity to arbitrarily add, modify, or remove log entries.
The fraud began when defendant Governor Kemp, defendant Secretary Roethlisberger, and the Georgia Board of Elections, members of which are also defendants, hastily bought the Dominion voting system software and hardware. Kemp and Roethlisberger disregarded all the evidence from the Texas and others showing that the machines were vulnerable to fraud and impossible to audit. Ironically, it was the Democrats who were initially worried about the system's fraud potential. Earlier this year, presumably in response to the Wuhan virus, Raffensperger illegally entered into a settlement agreement with various Georgia Democrat organizations, by which he agreed to ignore the state's strong, specific statutory voting safeguards for the absentee ballots. This opened the door to massive fraud, as well as violating recount safeguards. Justice Kavanaugh's warning to federal courts not to alter with election statutes clearly applies to Raffensperger's as well. With Raffensperger's guidance, election officials and poll workers refused to observe statutory safeguards. Among other things, numerous eyewitnesses testified that they didn't verify signatures, check security envelopes, or allowed challengers to observe the count. They also allegedly destroyed documentary evidence that the law required them to retain in connection with the mail-in voting. This matters because the legal doctrine of spoliation, deliberately destroying documents that can be used in evidence in a possible case, means that the missing documents will be presumed to have shown evidence adverse to the party that destroyed them. The complaint also offers voluminous eyewitness and expert testimony about the Dominion system's vulnerability to fraud. Both eyewitness and expert evidence shows that the machines were designed to offer every available avenue for fraud, including taking advantage of voter errors. To optimize the fraud, late at night on November 3rd, Georgia's election workers stated a lie about a massive leak at the State Farm Arena that required them to shut down the count. In fact, after the arena was closed, there was eyewitness testimony that several election workers spent approximately 3 unsupervised hours working at the computers.
Democrat-majority counties performed virtually no signature verification, allowing massive illegal vote dumps for Biden.
In Georgia, the signature verification requirement is a dead letter. The signature rejection rate for the most recent election, announced by the Secretary of State, was 0.15%. The signature rejection rate for absentee ballot applications was 0.00167%, only 30 statewide. Hancock County, Georgia, population 8,348, rejected 9 absentee ballot applications for signature mismatch.
Hundreds of witnesses observed illegal handling of ballots, even with restricted access to view counting.
I witnessed 2 poll workers placing already separated paper machine receipt ballots with barcodes in the Trump tray, placing them into the Biden tray. I also witnessed the same 2 poll workers putting the already separated paper receipt ballots in the no vote and Jorgensen tray. Removing them and putting them inside the Biden tray, they then took out all of the ballots out of the Biden tray and stacked them on the table, writing on the count ballot sheet.
As a matter of law, the pervasive pattern of fraud is so overwhelming that it precludes the mistake defense. This pattern is shown throughout expert reports and statistical analysis, providing that hundreds of thousands of votes for Trump were either lost or transferred to Biden. Republican candidates in Georgia's 6th and 7th districts were also affected. Along the way, the complaint also alleges 1. China and Iran spied on the election and possibly manipulated it. 2. Trump-hating Eric Coomer helped develop Dominion. 3. Almost 100,000 absentee ballots in Georgia were recorded as requested and were included in the vote count, except that there's no record they were ever returned to county election boards. And 4. Agents of China and Iran accessed the computers.
Broken chain of custody for voting machines and bundles of ballots.
We typically receive the machines, the ballot marking devices, on the Friday before the election, with a chain of custody letter to be signed on Sunday, indicating that we had received the machines and the counts on the machines when received, and that the machines have been sealed. In this case, we were asked to sign the chain of custody letter on Sunday, even though the machines were not delivered until 2 a.m. in the morning on Election Day.
Democrat majority counties illegally prevented Republican poll watchers from monitoring vote counting activities.
Plaintiffs can show that Democrat majority counties provided political parties and candidates, including the Trump campaign, no meaningful access or actual opportunity to review and assess the validity of mail-in ballots during the pre-canvassing meetings. While in the audit or recount, they witnessed Trump votes being put into Biden piles.
There had been no meaningful way to review or audit any activity at the hand recount.
There was no way to tell if any counting was accurate or if the activity was proper.
Large batches of pristine, identical ballots, 90% for Biden.
A large number of ballots were identical and likely fraudulent. Affiant observed a batch of utterly pristine ballots.
These different ballots included a slight depressed prefold so they could be easily folded and unfolded for use in the scanning machines. There were no markings on the ballots to show where they had come from, or where they had been processed. These stood out. In my 20 years of experience of handling ballots, I observed that the markings for the candidates on these ballots were unusually uniform, perhaps even with a ballot marking device. By my estimate in observing these ballots, approximately 98% constituted votes for Joe Biden. I only observed 2 of these ballots as votes for President Donald J. Trump.
For those of us who have been following closely Ms. Powell's statements during various television and radio interviews, we're familiar with the factual outlines. What's different is that A, the complaint actually identifies and summarizes the specific witness statements, and B, it details the specific acts of fraud and how they violated state and federal law, as well as the Constitution. Instead of snippets, we now have the entire package of all the things that went wrong in Georgia. Biden allegedly won the state by 12,670 votes. If proven, the allegations in the complaint show that at minimum Trump lost almost 100,000 votes due to the alleged fraud. Because this number exceeds Biden's alleged margin of victory, it requires the election to be put aside.
So what do you think? What are your thoughts on these allegations as presented in Sidney Powell's explosive suit? How much momentum do you think can be gained between now and the Georgia Senate runoff? And lastly, Do you feel that this will be enough to sway the remaining 50% of Americans who feel that Biden is stealing the 2020 election? Let us know in the comments below or jump over to our Discord server where you can not only interact with us via text, voice, or video, but you will also have access to all of our archive research materials that we use to create our videos. Link is in the description. We at The Conservative Take strongly encourage you to check out the complaint yourself. Reducing a 104-page complaint to a 17-minute video, despite Ms. Whitberg and Mr. Ross's brilliant work, does Ms. Powell and her team a huge disservice. The documents are available via Sidney Powell's website. If you enjoy the content on The Conservative Take, please hit those like and subscribe buttons, the bell icon, and please share with your friends. It really helps to grow the channel as we are setting a goal to reach 10,000 subscribers. And if you would like to support this channel and become a member, please click the join button to find out how to do just that. As always, please check out some content that we have right here.